The Xanthian trade station hung in space like a glittering jewel, a hub of commerce and diplomacy at the crossroads of a dozen spacefaring civilizations. Valeria Rex, an administrative attaché to Earth's diplomatic delegation, strode through the vaulted halls with purpose. Valeria had spent the last 6 months on Xanthia, working tirelessly to secure a trade agreement that would bring vital resources to Earth's colonies. The long days of negotiations were taxing, but she believed in the importance of her mission. Earth needed allies among the stars. As she walked, Valeria's thoughts drifted to her husband, General Thaddeus Rex. He was due to arrive on Xanthia today to finalize the trade agreement. She allowed herself a small smile, looking forward to seeing him after their long separation. Valeria was shaken from her reverie by a sudden impact. Lost in thought, she had collided with a hulking alien figure rounding a corner. "Watch where you're going, human," the alien growled, his bony protrusions quivering with irritation. "My apologies," Valeria said calmly, taking a step back. "I should have been more careful." The alien, a Crotax warrior clad in ceremonial armor, loomed over her. "Your apologies are worthless," he spat. "You humans always think you can waltz through the galaxy, disrespecting your betters. You need to be taught your place." Before Valeria could react, the Crotax lashed out, striking her across the face with a powerful blow. She staggered back, tasting blood in her mouth. Around them, the station's denizens looked on in shocked silence. Valeria straightened, locking eyes with her attacker. "That was a mistake," she said quietly, steel in her voice. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The Crotax laughed harshly. "I don't care who you are, human. You're all the same to me, weak, pathetic creatures playing at being a great power. I am Valeria Rex, wife of General Thaddeus Rex, commander of Earth's forces in this sector," she said, her words cutting through the sudden hush. "And you have just committed an act of war." The Crotax's eyes widened slightly, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly. But he quickly recovered, sneering at Valeria. "Your husband is not here, human. And even if he was, what could one man do against the might of the Crotax Empire?" As if on cue, a voice rang out across the hall, cold and hard as a diamond. "Let's find out, shall we?" Valeria turned to see Thaddeus striding towards them, his uniform crisp, his eyes blazing with barely contained fury. The general had arrived on Xanthia, and he had just witnessed an alien warrior strike his wife. The Crotax had no idea the storm that was about to descend upon him. He had picked a fight with the wrong human, and now there would be consequences that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Order. Thaddeus came to a stop beside Valeria, his gaze never leaving the Crotax warrior. "You have made a grave error," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "one that will not go unanswered." The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the resolve of Earth and its allies, a clash of civilizations with the fate of billions hanging in the balance. On that day, in that moment, a single thoughtless act of aggression would ignite a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy forever. Valeria looked to her husband, seeing the determination etched in every line of his face. She knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. For better or worse, the die had been cast. There was no turning back now. In the heart of the Xanthian trade station, General Thaddeus Rex stared down the Crotax warrior who had dared to lay a hand on his wife. The air crackled with tension as the two men sized each other up, the weight of their respective civilizations bearing down upon them. "You have committed an act of war against Earth and its citizens," Thaddeus said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I demand that you surrender yourself to face justice for your crimes." The Crotax laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the halls. "Justice? What do you humans know of justice? You are a young, upstart species playing at galactic politics. The Crotax Empire has endured for millennia, and we will not bend to your whims." Thaddeus' eyes narrowed. "Earth may be young compared to your empire, but we have faced down threats far greater than you. We have earned our place among the stars through blood and sacrifice, and we will not tolerate any insult or aggression against our people." The general turned to the gathered crowd of onlookers, raising his voice so that all could hear. "Let it be known that from this day forward, any attack on a citizen of Earth will be treated as an attack on Earth itself. We will respond with all the force and fury at our command." The Crotax delegation shifted uneasily, murmuring among themselves. They had not expected such a fierce response from the humans. Their warrior had acted rashly, but to back down now would be to lose face before the entire galaxy. The Crotax ambassador stepped forward, his robes swirling around him. "General Rex, while we regret the actions of our warrior, we cannot simply hand him over to you. Our laws and customs must be respected. Perhaps we can reach a diplomatic solution that satisfies honor on both sides." Valeria, still reeling from the shock of the attack, placed a hand on her husband's arm. "Thaddeus, we must be cautious," she whispered urgently. "A misstep here could lead to war, to countless lives lost. Let us seek a peaceful resolution if we can." Thaddeus looked down at his wife, seeing the wisdom in her words even as his anger burned hot within him. He turned back to the Crotax delegation, his jaw set with determination. "Very well," he said, his tone measured. "We will meet to discuss terms, but make no mistake, Earth will have justice for this insult. One way or another, there will be a reckoning." As the two sides separated to prepare for the negotiations, Valeria couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Crotax were proud and powerful, with a warrior culture that prized strength above all else. They would not easily bend to Earth's demands. And yet, as she looked at her husband, she saw a man who would not rest until his people were safe and their honor was satisfied. Thaddeus Rex was a leader forged in the fires of war, a man who had faced down impossible odds and emerged victorious. If anyone could navigate this crisis and emerge with Earth's interests intact, it was him. But even as Valeria placed her faith in her husband, she couldn't help but wonder what price they might have to pay for that victory. In the great game of galactic politics, the stakes were always high, and when two civilizations clashed, the fallout could be catastrophic. As the station's artificial day cycle shifted into night, casting long shadows across the halls, Valeria knew that the coming days would test them all. The fate of Earth, of the Crotax, and of the delicate balance of power that held the galaxy together hung in the balance. And in the midst of it all, a single man would stand tall, ready to do whatever it took to protect his people and preserve their way of life. For better or worse, General Thaddeus Rex would lead humanity into the fire, and the galaxy would tremble before them. In a private conference room deep within the Xanthian trade station, General Thaddeus Rex faced off against the Crotax delegation. The air was thick with tension as the two sides stared each other down, each unwilling to give an inch. "The Crotax Empire demands that you withdraw your accusation of war," the ambassador said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Our warrior acted in accordance with our laws and customs. To punish him for upholding our ways would be a grave insult to our honor." Thaddeus leaned forward, his eyes hard as flint. "And what of the insult to Earth's honor?" He countered. "Your warrior struck an unarmed diplomat, a representative of our people. That cannot go unanswered." The ambassador waved a dismissive hand. "A minor incident, hardly worth all this fuss. The human was in the warrior's way. She should have shown proper respect." Valeria, seated beside her husband, bristled at the ambassador's words. "Respect is earned, not demanded at the end of a fist," she said, her voice cold. The Crotax delegation shifted, uneasy with the human woman's defiance. In their culture, females were expected to remain silent in matters of war and diplomacy. Thaddeus shot his wife a warning glance, but there was pride in his eyes. He turned back to the ambassador, his tone measured but firm. "We will not back down on this, Ambassador. Earth demands that your warrior be turned over to face justice under our laws. If you refuse, We will have no choice but to consider it an act of aggression against our people." The ambassador's eyes narrowed. "You would risk war over the fate of one man. The Crotax Empire has destroyed civilizations for far less, and Earth has faced down threats that would make your empire tremble." Thaddeus countered. "We do not seek war, but we will not run from it either. The choice is yours." As the negotiations stretched on, Valyria couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The Crotax were stalling, dragging out the talks without offering any real concessions. It was as if they were buying time for something. Excusing herself from the conference room, Valyria slipped into the station's bustling corridors. She had spent months on Xanthia, building relationships with the station's staff and denizens. If anyone could ferret out the truth of what the Crotax were planning, it was her. As she moved through the shadows, Valyria's instincts led her to a secluded cargo bay. There, hidden among the crates and containers, she overheard a hushed conversation between two Crotax warriors. "The plan is in motion," one of them growled. "The human general will not leave this station alive. When he is dead, the humans will have no choice but to submit to our demands." Valyria's blood ran cold. The Crotax were planning to assassinate her husband, to decapitate Earth's leadership and force a surrender. She had to warn Thaddeus before it was too late. Racing back to the conference room, Valyria burst in, her face pale. "Thaddeus, we need to go now," she said, urgency in her voice. "The Crotax are planning to kill you." The general was on his feet in an instant, his hand going to the sidearm at his hip. The Crotax delegation erupted in protests, denying any knowledge of a plot. But Thaddeus silenced them with a look. "This ends now," he said, his voice hard as steel. "If your warriors come for me, they will find me ready. And if I fall, Earth will rain fire and fury upon your empire like nothing you have ever seen." With that, Thaddeus and Valyria strode from the room, leaving the stunned Crotax in their wake. The confrontation had reached a tipping point, and now there was no turning back. Honor would be satisfied, one way or another. As they raced through the station's halls, Valyria could only pray that they would be in time. The fate of Earth, and of the man she loved, hung in the balance, and she would do whatever it took to see them both safe. In the grand atrium of the Xanthian trade station, General Thaddeus Rex stood tall, his eyes scanning the gathered crowd. Word of the impending duel had spread like wildfire, and now it seemed as if the entire station had turned out to witness the spectacle. Across the open space, the Crotax warrior who had struck Valyria loomed, his ceremonial armor glinting in the artificial light. He carried a massive warhammer, its head wreathed in crackling energy. Thaddeus, by contrast, wore a simple combat hardsuit, unadorned save for the Earth Defense Force insignia on its breast. At his side hung a plasma sword, a weapon of elegant lethality. As the two warriors faced off, the Crotax ambassador stepped forward, his voice booming across the atrium. "Let it be known that on this day, a matter of honor will be settled between the Crotax Empire and the upstart humans of Earth. May the strongest prevail." Thaddeus met the ambassador's gaze, unflinching. "Let it be known that on this day, humanity will not back down in the face of aggression," he declared. "We will fight for our honor and for the safety of our people." With that, the duel began. The Crotax warrior charged forward, his hammer held high. Thaddeus met him head-on, his plasma sword flashing in a blinding arc. The two warriors clashed in a flurry of strikes and parries, their weapons unleashing showers of sparks with each impact. The Crotax was strong, his hammer blows enough to shatter stone. But Thaddeus was fast, his sword darting in and out like a viper's tongue. As they fought, Valyria watched from the sidelines, her heart in her throat. She had seen her husband in combat before, had witnessed the deadly grace with which he moved. But this was different. This was a fight not just for their lives, but for the very soul of humanity. The Crotax warrior pressed his advantage, driving Thaddeus back with a series of crushing blows. The general's hard suit absorbed the worst of the impact, but Valeria could see the strain on her husband's face. He was tiring, his movements slowing. And then, in a flash of inspiration, Thaddeus changed his tactics. Instead of meeting the Crotax's hammer head-on, he ducked and weaved, using his sword to deflect the blows rather than block them. The Crotax, thrown off balance by the sudden shift, stumbled forward. And in that moment, Thaddeus struck, his plasma sword slicing through the warrior's armor like a hot knife through butter. The Crotax fell to his knees, his hammer clattering to the floor. Thaddeus stood over him, his sword poised at the warrior's throat. "Yield," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. For a long moment, the Crotax warrior stared up at Thaddeus, hate burning in his eyes. But at last, he bowed his head. "I yield," he growled, the words bitter on his tongue. A cheer went up from the human delegation, a roar of triumph and relief. Thaddeus stepped back, allowing the Crotax to rise. "Let this be a lesson," he said, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Earth will not be cowed. We will not be broken. We will stand tall among the stars, and woe betide any who seek to test our resolve." As the crowd began to disperse, Valeria rushed to her husband's side, throwing her arms around him. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You won." Thaddeus held her close, the scent of sweat and ozone clinging to his hard suit. "We won," he corrected gently. "Earth won today, but the fight is far from over." Valeria knew he was right. The Crotax would not forget this humiliation easily. There would be other challenges, other threats to face. But for now, in this moment, they had triumphed. And as Thaddeus and Valeria made their way back to their quarters, hand in hand, they knew that whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. For they were human, and they would never stop fighting for their place among the stars. In the wake of General Thaddeus Rex's victory over the Crotax warrior, the balance of power on this Athian trade station had shifted. The humans of Earth had shown that they would not be intimidated, that they would stand firm in the face of aggression. But the Crotax were not ready to concede defeat. Even as Thaddeus and Valeria savored their triumph, the Crotax ambassador was plotting his next move. He would not allow the upstart humans to humiliate his people, to undermine their standing in the eyes of the galaxy. As the trade negotiations resumed, the ambassador played his hand. "The Crotax Empire will agree to your terms," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "But there is one condition. General Rex must submit to a trial by combat, facing our greatest warrior in a fight to the death. If he refuses, the deal is off." Thaddeus bristled at the ultimatum, his hand tightening on the hilt of his plasma sword. But before he could speak, Valeria laid a hand on his arm. "We accept your challenge," she said, her voice ringing with confidence. "But the fight will take place on our terms, using human technology and ingenuity." The ambassador's eyes narrowed, but he could not back down without losing face. "Very well," he growled. "Name your terms." Valeria smiled, a fierce, predatory grin. "The fight will take place in a simulated environment of our choosing. Your warrior will face not just General Rex, but the full might of human military technology. We will show you what our species is truly capable of." The stage was set for a final, decisive confrontation. The Crotax champion, a towering behemoth clad in advanced power armor, stood ready to face the human challenger. But when the simulation began, it was not General Rex who stepped forward to meet him. Instead, a sleek, robotic figure emerged from the shadows, its metal skin glinting in the artificial light. It was a human-made battle android, controlled remotely by Thaddeus from a secure command center. The Crotax warrior charged, his massive fists crackling with energy. But the android was faster, darting and weaving with inhuman grace. It unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts and micro-missiles, each one precisely targeted to exploit the weaknesses in the Crotax's armor. The warrior fought back with all his strength, but it was no use. The android was relentless, adapting its tactics in real time to counter every move. In the end, the Crotax champion fell, his armor shattered, his body broken. As the simulation faded, the Crotax delegation stood in stunned silence. Thaddeus and Valeria emerged from the command center, their faces flush with victory. "Let this be a lesson," Thaddeus said, his voice carrying across the room. "Humanity will not be underestimated. Our strength lies not just in our warriors, but in our scientists, our engineers, our thinkers. We will meet any challenge, overcome any obstacle, to secure our place among the stars." The Crotax ambassador bowed his head, recognizing the magnitude of his defeat. "The Crotax Empire acknowledges the superiority of human technology and ingenuity," he said formally. "We will agree to your terms and look forward to a new era of cooperation between our peoples." As the trade deal was signed and the delegation prepared to depart, Valeria turned to her husband, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it," she said softly. "You showed them what humanity is capable of." Thaddeus smiled, drawing her close. "We did it," he corrected. "Earth stands tall today because of the strength and wisdom of all its people, and with leaders like you by my side, there is nothing we cannot achieve." Hand in hand, Thaddeus and Valeria walked towards the future, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might bring. For they were human, and they would never stop reaching for the stars.